Taman stared at his phone screen for the 5th time that hour. The eviction notice glowed back at him with cold finality. He had 2 weeks to find a new place to live. 2 weeks, and his bank account showed numbers that made his stomach hurt. Seoul, in 2247, was not kind to graduate students. Ever since Earth joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago, everything had become expensive. Aliens visited Earth now. They opened businesses. They bought property. And regular humans like Taman got pushed out of their own neighborhoods because they could not compete with beings who had technology and wealth from 1,000 different worlds. Taman walked through the university campus with his shoulders hunched against the autumn wind. Other students laughed and talked around him. They had families with money. They had connections. Taman had nothing but student debt and a degree in xenobiology that might never lead to a real job. His research advisor had been sympathetic but useless. Maybe you could defer your studies for a semester, she had suggested. Get a job, save some money, come back when you're stable. But Taman knew how that story ended. Students who left never came back. They got trapped in low-wage jobs serving alien tourists or working in factories that manufactured galactic technology. His dream of becoming a xenobiologist would die before it even started. He sat on a bench near the library and opened the housing application on his phone. The listings made him want to cry. Studio apartments that cost 3 times his monthly stipend. Shared rooms in basements with 4 other people. Places so far from campus that he would spend half his day traveling. Then he saw it. The listing looked wrong somehow. The price was impossibly low. The location was in Gangnam, one of the most expensive districts in Seoul. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and modern amenities. Taman's finger hovered over the listing. This had to be a scam. Nobody offered places like this for so little money, but he clicked anyway. The description was brief. Seeking open-minded roommate, private bedroom, shared common areas. Tenant must be comfortable with alternative lifestyles. Dietary accommodations required, but will be explained in person. Serious inquiries only. Taman read it 3 times. Alternative lifestyles? Dietary accommodations? Maybe the roommate was vegan or ate weird alien food. He could handle that. He could handle anything if it meant having a roof over his head. He sent a message before he could talk himself out of it. The response came within minutes. Can you meet today? 4 p.m. An address followed. Taman checked the time. He had 2 hours. His hands shook slightly as he typed back. Yes, I'll be there. The building was beautiful. Glass and steel reached toward the sky. The lobby had actual plants growing in elegant pots. A doorman nodded at Taman as he entered. This was definitely out of his league. He took the elevator to the 14th floor. His reflection stared back at him from the polished doors. He looked tired, poor. His jacket had a stain he had not noticed before. He tried to smooth his hair down. The apartment door was black with silver numbers. Taman knocked. The being who opened the door was not human. Taman had seen many aliens during his studies. Earth was full of them now. But seeing one in a textbook was different from standing in front of one in a quiet hallway. The alien was tall, taller than any human Taman had met. His skin was pale, almost white, with a faint blue tint. His eyes were large and dark, without visible pupils. He wore simple clothes, black pants and a gray shirt, but moved with an odd grace. You are Taman? The alien's voice was soft, accented in a way Taman could not place. Yes? You're the roommate? I am Vex. Please, come in. The apartment was stunning. Huge windows overlooked the city. The furniture was minimal, but expensive looking. Everything was clean, almost too clean, like nobody actually lived here. But there were odd things. All the windows had thick blackout curtains. The temperature was cool, almost cold, and Taman noticed several refrigeration units along one wall, humming quietly. Please sit, Vex said, gesturing to a couch. Taman sat. Vex remained standing, his hands clasped in front of him. He looked nervous. I should be direct, Vex said. I have had trouble finding roommates when they learn about my requirements. They usually leave. What requirements? Taemin's mouth felt dry. Vex was quiet for a long moment. I am hemivore. Do you know this word? Taemin's xenobiology classes came flooding back. Hemivores, blood drinkers, species that required blood to survive. There were several hemivore species in the galaxy. Most were rare. Most were not popular with other species. You need blood, Taemin said slowly. Yes, Vex looked at the floor. I can eat some regular food, but I need blood to live. Without it, I become sick, weak. Eventually, I die. Okay, Taemin said. His brain was trying to process this. So, what does that have to do with roommates? Vex gestured to the refrigeration units. Synthetic blood is legal, but expensive. Very expensive. I work as a data analyst, but most of my money goes to blood. I cannot afford this apartment alone. But I also cannot lie to potential roommates about what I am. I still don't understand the dietary accommodation part, Taemin said. Vex finally met his eyes. If you live here, I would need you to donate blood once per month. 1 pint. I have medical equipment. It is safe, sterile, legal under galactic health codes. You would receive supplements afterward to help your body recover. In exchange, rent would be 80% below market rate. Taemin's mind went blank. Then it started racing. This alien wanted his blood. Once a month, in exchange for cheap rent. It sounded insane. It sounded dangerous. It sounded like exactly the kind of thing desperate people did. How many people have you asked? Taemin heard himself say. You are number 24. And they all said no? Most left as soon as I explained. Some were unkind. Taemin looked around the apartment again. 2 bedrooms. Clean. Safe. Close to campus. He thought about his eviction notice. About sleeping in a basement with 4 strangers. About giving up his degree and working in a factory. Is it really safe? He asked. The blood donation? Yes. I follow all medical protocols. You can verify everything with Galactic Health Services. Many humans donate blood regularly to help others. This is the same, just for different biology. Why humans? Taemin asked. Why not find another hemivore to live with? Vex's expression shifted. Something like sadness crossed his face. Most species find us disgusting. They fear us. Even other hemivores avoid each other. It reminds us too much of what we are. Humans are different. Since Earth joined the Council, humans have been the only species willing to donate voluntarily. Galactic sociologists study this. They do not understand why. Taemin laughed. It came out bitter. Maybe because we're desperate too. Maybe because we know what it's like to be treated like garbage. Vex tilted his head. Perhaps. Taemin stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there was his future. The question was, which future? The safe one where he stayed poor and struggling but kept his blood to himself? Or the weird one where he lived with an alien who needed something most people would never give? His phone buzzed. Another message from his landlord. Reminder about the eviction. I want to see the medical equipment, Taemin said. I want to see proof that this is legal, and I want everything in writing. Vex nodded slowly. Of course, I can show you everything. Then, okay, Taemin said, I'll do it. For the first time, Vex smiled. It was small, almost shy. Thank you, he said quietly. You do not know what this means. Taemin shrugged. Probably means I'm crazy, but I need a place to live, and you need blood. So I guess we're both crazy. Perhaps crazy is better than alone, Vex said. Taemin thought about that. About being alone in a city that did not care about him. About being different in a galaxy that feared difference. Yeah, he said, maybe it is. Moving day came faster than Taemin expected. He did not own much. 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of books, his computer, and a cheap coffee maker that barely worked. Everything fit in a taxi. When he arrived at the building, Vex was waiting in the lobby to help carry things up. "You travel light," Vex observed as they rode the elevator. "I'm poor," Taman said bluntly. "Poor people don't have stuff." Vex nodded, but said nothing. Taman appreciated that. He was tired of people pretending poverty was some kind of choice or lifestyle. His new bedroom was bigger than his entire previous apartment. It had a real bed, a desk, a closet with actual space. Windows overlooked the city. Taman set his suitcases down and just stood there for a moment. This was real. This was actually happening. "I will let you unpack," Vex said from the doorway. "I work from home, so I will be in my room if you need anything. I keep unusual hours. I hope that will not disturb you." "What kind of hours?" "I am most active at night. I sleep during the day. Hemovore biology is different from human." "Okay," Taman said. "I'm usually up late studying anyway." The first week was strange. Taman barely saw Vex. He would wake up in the morning and find the apartment empty and silent. He would go to classes, come home, study. Around midnight, he would hear Vex's bedroom door open, footsteps in the hallway, the sound of the refrigerator opening, then silence again. They were like ghosts living in the same space. But Taman noticed things. The apartment was always spotless. Vex cleaned constantly. The kitchen was organized perfectly. Even the bathroom stayed immaculate. It was almost unnatural how clean everything was. He also noticed the curtains. They were always closed. Every window had thick blackout material that let no light through. Once, Taman opened them to let morning sun in. When he came home that afternoon, they were closed again. On the 8th night, Taman was studying at the kitchen table when Vex emerged from his room. He looked surprised to see Taman there. "Sorry," Vex said. "I thought you would be asleep." "Big test tomorrow," Taman explained. "Need coffee." "Ah." Vex moved to the refrigerator. He opened one of the special units he kept his blood in. Taman tried not to stare, but he could not help it. The container looked medical, professional. Vex poured some into a glass and closed the unit. "Does it taste good?" Taman asked before he could stop himself. Vex paused. "That is an interesting question. Most people ask if it tastes like human food, or if I enjoy drinking it." "Well, do you?" Vex sat down at the table across from him. "It tastes necessary, like water tastes to humans, I think. Not exciting, just needed." "That sounds sad," Taman said. "Perhaps." Vex tilted his head. "But I do not know anything different. This is simply how I exist." They sat in silence for a moment. Taman went back to his notes. Vex sipped his blood slowly. It should have felt horrifying, Taman thought, sitting across from someone drinking blood, but it just felt normal, like having coffee with a friend. "Can I ask you something?" Taman said. "Yes. Why do people hate hemovores so much? I mean, I studied xenobiology. I learned about lots of species that eat weird things. Some species eat rocks, some eat radiation, but nobody seems scared of them." Vex was quiet for a long time. "Blood is intimate," he finally said. "It is inside the body. It is life itself. When we need blood, it reminds other species of their vulnerability, of death. We are walking reminders that they are mortal, that they are prey." "But you're not hunting anyone," Taman said. "You're just trying to live." "Fear is not logical," Vex said softly. "You must know this. Humans understand fear better than most species." Taman thought about that, about how people treated humans in the galaxy. Primitive, violent, dangerous. Never mind that Earth had not had a major war in 50 years. Never mind that humans were making incredible progress. The reputation stuck. "Yeah," Taman said. "I guess we do." The first donation day came at the end of the month. Taman had been nervous about it all week. Vex had been extra quiet, extra careful, like he was afraid Taman would change his mind. "We can do this in my room," Vex said. I have everything prepared. Vex's room was a surprise. Taman had expected something dark and creepy. Instead, it looked like a medical office. There was a comfortable chair, the kind used for blood donations. Medical equipment on a clean table. Everything was sterile and professional. Sit here, Vex said, gesturing to the chair. I will explain everything before we start. He showed Taman the equipment. Brand new needles, still in sealed packages. Medical grade collection bags. Everything certified by Galactic health authorities. He explained the process step by step. How he would clean the area, how the needle would feel, how long it would take. You can stop at any time, Vex said. If you feel dizzy or uncomfortable, just tell me. Have you done this before? Taman asked. Many times. I am certified. It is required by law for hemivores who accept donations. Taman took a deep breath. Okay, let's do it. The needle pinch was sharp but brief. Taman watched the blood flow through the tube into the bag. It looked strange, seeing his own blood outside his body. Dark red and vital. Vex worked with steady hands. He did not look at Taman's face. He focused entirely on the medical procedure. Professional, careful. When the bag was full, he removed the needle and pressed gauze to Taman's arm. Hold pressure here, he said. I will get the supplements. He returned with pills and a protein drink. Take these now. Drink plenty of water today. No heavy exercise for 24 hours. You may feel tired. This is normal. Taman swallowed the pills and drank the protein shake. It tasted awful. Is that it? That is it. Vex held the blood bag carefully, almost reverently. Thank you. This will last me 2 weeks if I am careful. Only 2 weeks? I thought 1 pint was enough for a month. For survival, yes. But to stay healthy, to function well, I need more. I supplement with synthetic blood, but fresh as Vex. Paused. Better, more complete. Taman stood up slowly. He did feel a little lightheaded, but not terrible. So, you're basically always hungry? Always rationing, Vex corrected. Always calculating how much I can take from storage. Always worried it will run out. That's a shitty way to live, Taman said. It is the way I live, Vex replied simply. Over the following weeks, something shifted between them. They talked more. Small conversations at first. About work, about school, about the weather. Then deeper things. Taman learned that Vex had been denied housing 23 times before finding this apartment. He learned that most jobs would not hire hemivores. That some planets banned them entirely. That Vex's own family had moved to a remote colony world just to escape the discrimination. I wanted to stay near the core worlds, Vex explained one night. I wanted to prove we could integrate, that we could live normal lives. But it is harder than I thought. Why Earth? Taman asked. Why come here? Because humans are the only species who treat us like people, Vex said. Not good people, not welcome people, but still people. That is more than most others offer. Taman told Vex about his own struggles, about growing up poor in a world that suddenly had access to incredible alien wealth, about watching his neighborhood change as aliens bought everything, about how humans were supposed to be grateful for joining the Galactic Council, but mostly they just felt left behind. My parents work in factories making galactic tech, Taman said. They work 12-hour days. They can barely afford their apartment. Meanwhile, aliens visit Earth like it's a theme park. They take pictures of us like we're primitive exhibits. That must create anger, Vex said. It creates shame, Taman said. We're supposed to be advanced now. We're supposed to be part of the galaxy. But we're still at the bottom. Still poor. Still looked down on. Perhaps that is why you understand, Vex said quietly. You know what it feels like to be judged for things you cannot control. Taman thought about that. About blood and poverty. About biology and birthplace. About all the ways the galaxy found to separate people into worthy and unworthy. Yeah, he said, I guess I do. One night, Taman found Vex in the kitchen, looking at his phone with an expression Taman had never seen before. It took a moment to recognize it. Grief. What's wrong? Taman asked. Vex looked up. His dark eyes seemed even darker. My brother? He was denied medical treatment. The hospital said they could not risk their blood supply on a hemivore. He died yesterday. Taman felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's murder. That is policy, Vex said bitterly. Legal, defendable. They will face no consequences. I'm sorry, Taman said. The words felt inadequate. He was younger than me. He wanted to be a teacher. He loved children, but no school would hire him. No hospital would treat him. And now he is gone. Vex stood abruptly. Excuse me, I need to be alone. He disappeared into his room. Taman stood in the kitchen, feeling helpless. What could he do? What could he say? The galaxy was cruel and huge and indifferent. But he was not indifferent. He was angry. And anger, Taman was learning, could be useful. 3 months into living together, Taman and Vex had developed a comfortable routine. Taman would study late into the night. Vex would emerge from his room and work at his computer in the living room. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just existed in the same space, comfortable with the silence. Taman had started cooking extra portions of dinner. Vex could eat some solid food, though he claimed it provided little nutrition. Still, he seemed to enjoy the gesture. They would sit together at the kitchen table, Taman eating his meal, Vex picking at rice or vegetables and sipping his blood from a plain glass. This is nice, Vex said one evening. I have not shared meals with anyone in years. Why not? Taman asked. Other hemivores find it strange. We do not usually eat together. It emphasizes our difference from each other and other species. Vex shrugged. They cannot get past what I am drinking. It's just blood, Taman said. I work with blood cells under microscopes all day. It's biology. Nothing scary about biology. You are unusual, Vex said. Most humans are not like you. Most humans are better than you think, Taman replied. We just spent 10,000 years killing each other over stupid stuff. We learned some things about prejudice the hard way. That night, Taman returned home late from the library. It was past midnight. The building was quiet. He took the elevator up to the 14th floor, already thinking about sleep. When the doors opened, he knew immediately something was wrong. The apartment door was open, not just unlocked, actually open, hanging crooked on its hinges. The frame was splintered. Someone had forced their way in. Taman's heart hammered. He pulled out his phone and started to call the police. Then he heard a sound from inside, a low groan, pained. Vex, he called, another groan. Taman pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The apartment was destroyed, furniture overturned. Glass shattered across the floor. The refrigeration units were smashed open. Broken containers leaking blood across the white tiles. The words parasite and blood filth were spray painted across the walls in bright red. And in the middle of the living room, Vex lay curled on his side. Taman ran to him. Vex, can you hear me? Vex's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. His shirt was torn and stained with his own blood, which was darker than human blood, almost black. He tried to speak, but only managed a weak sound. Don't move, Taman said. His hands shook as he dialed emergency services. I'm calling for help, the operator answered. Emergency services? What is your... My roommate was attacked, Taman said rapidly. He's badly hurt. We need medical and police immediately. What species is the victim? Hemivore. Why does that matter? We need to send appropriate medical personnel. What is your location? Taman gave the address. The operator said help was coming, but her voice had changed when she learned Vex was hemivore, become more formal, less urgent. Taman knelt beside Vex and carefully checked him over. His xenobiology training kicked in. He knew hemivore physiology. They were durable, hard to kill, but they needed blood to heal. And all of Vex's blood supply was currently leaking across the floor. Stay with me, Taman said. Help is coming. Vex's good eye focused on him. They called me monster, he whispered. Said, I did not belong here. Who did this? 3 of them. Masks, purity, front symbols. Taman felt rage burn through him. The Purity Front was a xenophobic group that had been growing in Seoul. They claimed to protect humanity from alien influence. Mostly, they just attacked anyone they thought was corrupting human society. The paramedics arrived 15 minutes later. They wore full protective gear. Like Vex was contagious. They were efficient but cold. No comforting words. No gentleness. They loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him out. I'm coming with him, Taman said. Family only, one paramedic said. I'm his roommate. I'm the closest thing he has to family on this planet. The paramedic looked at him with something like disgust. Suit yourself. The police arrived as they were leaving. 2 officers, both human, both looking bored. They asked basic questions, took photos. One of them looked at the spray-painted words and shook his head. Probably gang-related, he said. It was the Purity Front, Taman said. My roommate saw their symbols. We'll investigate, the officer said in a tone that meant they would not investigate at all. That's it? Taman demanded. Someone breaks into our home and nearly kills him, and you're just going to write a report and forget about it? Sir, we'll do everything we can, but these cases are complicated. Tensions are high right now between humans and certain alien populations. Tensions, Taman repeated. Someone gets beaten half to death and you call it tensions. The officer's expression hardened. Be careful about making accusations. The Purity Front is a registered political organization. They have rights. And my roommate doesn't? The officer did not answer. He finished his report and left. Taman sat in the destroyed apartment and shook with fury. He looked at the blood on the floor, at the hateful words on the walls, at the remains of everything Vex had needed to survive. Then he stood up and went to his room. His medical kit was in his closet. The donation equipment Vex had given him in case of emergencies. Taman grabbed it and headed for the hospital. The hospital staff tried to stop him. You can't donate blood without proper screening. There are protocols. I'm his roommate, Taman said. I donate monthly. I'm already screened. He needs blood now. We have synthetic blood, which is garbage compared to fresh. You know it, I know it. Now either let me donate or I'm going to call every news outlet in Seoul and tell them you refuse to let a hemovore's roommate help save his life. The nurse's lips thinned, but she led him to a donation room. Taman sat in the chair and extended his arm. The needle went in. He watched his blood flow through the tube he had donated 2 weeks ago. Donating again this soon was not recommended. He would feel weak for days. But Vex needed this. And Taman was not going to let him die because of some bureaucratic bullshit. When the bag was full, Taman felt dizzy. The nurse made him drink juice and eat cookies. Then she took the blood and disappeared. Taman sat in the waiting room for hours. His phone buzzed with messages from classmates. He ignored them all. Finally, a doctor emerged. Your roommate is stable, she said. The blood transfusion helped significantly. He should make a full recovery in a few days. Can I see him? He's sleeping. You should go home and rest. You look terrible. I'm not leaving. The doctor sighed, but did not argue. She directed him to Vex's room. Vex lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by monitoring equipment. His bruises looked worse under the harsh lights, but his breathing was steady. Taman pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down heavily. He must have fallen asleep, because the next thing he knew, it was morning. Sunlight came through the window, and Vex was awake, watching him with his dark eyes. You donated blood, Vex said. His voice was rough but stronger. Yeah, you donated 2 weeks ago. Donating again this soon is dangerous for humans. You were dying. The hospital had synthetic blood. Synthetic blood is shit, and we both know it. Vex was quiet for a long moment. Why? Taman rubbed his face. Why? What? Why risk yourself? You barely know me. We have a business arrangement. Nothing more. You could have let them give me synthetic blood. You could have walked away. Is that what you think? Taman asked. That this is just business? What else would it be? You're my friend, Taman said. You're the person I share meals with. The person I talk to at 2 in the morning when I can't sleep. The person who listens to me complain about school and money and all the ways the galaxy is unfair. You think I'm gonna let 3 assholes with masks take that away from me? Vex stared at him. I do not understand you. Good, Taman said. I don't understand me either, but I'm too angry to care right now. Those people came into our home. They destroyed your things. They hurt you. And the police don't care. The hospital barely cares. Everyone treats this like it's normal, like you deserve it for being what you are. Many people believe I do deserve it, Vex said quietly. Well, they're wrong, Taman said, and I'm going to prove it. How? Taman thought about the operator's cold voice, the paramedics' disgust, the police officer's indifference, the hospital's reluctance, all of it, every piece, was part of a system that said Vex's life mattered less. I don't know yet, Taman admitted, but I'm a xenobiology student. I know how to research. I know how to document. I know how to build an argument. And I'm going to show everyone exactly how fucked up the galaxy's treatment of hemivores really is. Vex's expression shifted. Something fragile and hopeful appeared in his eyes. You would do this? For me? For you, Taman agreed. For your brother. For every hemivore who gets treated like garbage just for existing? Yeah, I'll do it. You could face consequences. The Purity Front does not forgive those who oppose them. Taman laughed bitterly. I'm a poor human graduate student living on Earth. I'm already at the bottom. What are they going to do? Make me more poor? They could hurt you. Then we'll be hurt together, Taman said. Better than being safe and alone. Vex reached out slowly. His hand found Taman's. His skin was cool and smooth. Thank you, he whispered. You do not know what this means. Maybe I don't, Taman said, but I'm going to figure it out. Taman spent 3 days in the hospital with Vex. He slept in uncomfortable chairs and ate terrible cafeteria food. His professors sent concerned messages. His research advisor called twice. Taman ignored everything except the person in the hospital bed. Vex recovered faster than the doctors expected. Hemivore biology was resilient. With proper blood supply and rest, his bruises faded from black to purple to yellow. The swelling went down. He could sit up without pain by the second day. You should go to class, Vex said. You are missing important lectures. I'm learning more here than I would in any classroom, Taman replied. Learning what? How the system works, who it protects, who it abandons. Taman had been watching the hospital staff carefully. Some were kind, most were professional but distant. A few were openly hostile. He saw how they treated hemivore patients differently. Slower response times, less pain medication, shorter visits from doctors. He started taking notes, times, names, specific incidents. His phone filled with documentation. On the 4th day, Vex was discharged. They took a taxi back to the apartment. Someone had cleaned up the broken glass and blood, but the spray-painted words remained on the walls. The refrigeration units were beyond repair. I will need to order new units, Vex said quietly, and new blood supplies. It will take all of my savings. We'll figure it out, Taman said. That night, while Vex slept, Taman sat at his computer and started researching. He went through academic databases, legal documents, Galactic Council records. He searched for information about hemivores, their history, their rights, their legal status across different planets. What he found made his stomach turn. Hemivores were effectively second-class citizens throughout the galaxy. Over 40 planets had laws restricting where they could live. 37 planets banned them entirely. Employment discrimination was legal in most jurisdictions. Medical care was optional. Housing denials were common, and it was all justified with the same reasoning: safety, public health, cultural preservation. Taman thought about the officer's words. Tensions are high. Like Vex getting beaten was somehow understandable. Like hatred was just a natural force, like weather. He dug deeper and found something interesting: a database of hemivore-human interactions over the past 15 years. Since Earth joined the Galactic Council, humans had the highest rate of voluntary blood donation to hemivores. Humans were more likely to rent to hemivores, more likely to employ them, more likely to defend them. Galactic sociologists had written papers trying to explain it. Some claimed humans were naive about the dangers. Others suggested humans were too primitive to understand proper social hierarchies. A few noted that human history of overcoming prejudice might play a role, but these papers were dismissed as overly generous. "What are you doing?" Vex's voice came from behind him. Taman turned. Vex stood in the hallway, looking tired but curious. "Research," Taman said. "Want to see something interesting?" He showed Vex the database, the statistics about human hemivore interactions, the academic papers, the attempts to explain why humans were different. Vex read in silence. His expression was hard to read. "They think we are stupid," he said finally. "They think humans help us because humans do not know better." "Maybe," Taman said, "or maybe we help because we know exactly what it's like to be treated as less than, to have people make laws about us, rules about us, decisions about whether we deserve basic dignity. We spent thousands of years doing it to each other. We recognize the pattern." "Is that why you helped me?" Vex asked. "Because you recognize a pattern?" "I helped you because you needed help," Taman said, "and because you're my friend. But yeah, maybe the pattern matters too. Maybe seeing someone get hurt for existing makes me angry because I know how wrong it is." Vex sat down at the table. "I have something to show you too." He pulled out his own tablet and opened a file. "This is a database maintained by hemivore advocacy groups. It documents every hemivore death that could have been prevented with proper medical care, housing access, or legal protection. It goes back 200 years. The list was long. Thousands of names, thousands of stories. Each one was tagged with location, cause, and whether authorities investigated. Most were marked, no investigation. "Your brother is in here?" Taman asked quietly. Vex scrolled down to the most recent entries. There, a name Taman could not pronounce. "Died from treatable illness. Hospital refused treatment. No investigation." "We keep records," Vex said. "We document everything. But documentation does not create change. The galaxy does not care about hemivore deaths. We are acceptable losses." Taman stared at the screen, at the names, at the waste. "What if we wrote about this?" he said. "Write what? An article? A paper? Something that documents the discrimination and shows it to everyone, not just to hemivores who already know, not just to academics who don't care, to everyone." "No one will publish it," Vex said. "Hemivore advocacy papers are considered too political. Most journals reject them automatically." "My university has a journal," Taman said. "It's small, but it's legitimate. They publish xenobiology research. If we frame this as a xenobiology study, document the medical discrimination, show the data, they might accept it. And if they do not, then we post it online. We send it to news outlets. We make noise until someone listens." Vex looked at him for a long moment. "This could be dangerous. The Purity Front already targeted me once. If we publish something that challenges their beliefs, they will come back. And next time, they might target you too." "Good," Taman said. "Let them come. I'm tired of being quiet. I'm tired of watching bad things happen and pretending it's normal. My whole life, I've been told to accept things. Accept that humans are at the bottom. Accept that some people matter less. Accept that the system is what it is. I'm done accepting." "You sound angry," Vex observed. "I am angry. Aren't you?" I have been angry for a very long time, Vex said. But anger without direction accomplishes nothing. It only burns. Then let's give it direction, Taman said. Let's write this paper together. You provide the hemivore perspective and the data. I provide the xenobiology framework and the human angle. We show exactly how the system fails hemivores. We make it impossible to ignore. Vex was quiet. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, we do this together. They worked for weeks. Taman adjusted his class schedule. Vex took time off work. They sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents and data. They wrote and rewrote. They argued about phrasing and emphasis. They fact-checked obsessively. The paper grew into something powerful. It documented medical discrimination with specific cases. It showed employment statistics. It highlighted housing denials. It compared hemivore treatment across different species planets. And it showed the one anomaly in all the data humans. We need a strong conclusion, Taman said one night. Conclusions are supposed to be objective, Vex said. Screw objectivity. Objectivity is what lets people pretend discrimination is just data. We need to say what this means. They wrote, the systematic marginalization of hemivores represents not a biological necessity, but a moral failure. Species capable of interstellar travel and complex civilization remain incapable of treating blood-dependent beings with basic dignity. The human anomaly suggests this failure is not inevitable. Perhaps what the galaxy calls human naivety is actually human memory. A species that has lived through its own prejudices recognizes them in others. If humanity can learn this lesson, the galaxy can too. They will hate this, Vex said. Good, Taman replied. They should. They titled the paper Blood, Bigotry, and Biology, a case study in galactic discrimination. Taman submitted it to his university's journal with his advisor as a co-sponsor. The wait was agonizing. 3 weeks passed. Then the response came. Accepted for publication. Taman stared at the email. They accepted it. Vex looked over his shoulder. They did? They want to feature it in next month's issue. They're calling it groundbreaking. Or they will call it controversial and retract it, Vex said. But he was smiling. A real smile. Taman had never seen him look so hopeful. Maybe both, Taman said. But it will be out there. People will read it. They'll see the truth. And then what? Then we see what happens. Maybe nothing. Maybe something, but at least we tried. The paper published on a Tuesday morning. Taman's phone started buzzing immediately. Messages from classmates, emails from professors. His research advisor called. Taman, what have you done? She asked. She did not sound angry. She sounded amazed. Published a paper? This is going to cause problems. The university is already getting complaints. But it's also getting praise. This is remarkable work. Controversial, but remarkable. By afternoon, the paper had been shared across multiple academic networks. By evening, it was trending on social media. By midnight, news outlets were requesting interviews. Taman and Vex sat in their apartment watching their world change in real time. We did this, Vex said quietly. Yeah, Taman agreed. We did. His phone rang. An unknown number. Taman answered. Is this Taman? A professional voice asked. Yes. I'm calling from the Galactic Council's subcommittee on minority rights. We've read your paper. We would like to invite you and your co-author to testify at our next hearing. Would you be willing to speak about hemivore discrimination in an official capacity? Taman looked at Vex. Vex looked back at him. Yes, Taman said, we would. When he hung up, Vex asked, do you know what you just agreed to? Probably something dangerous and complicated? The Galactic Council does not invite random researchers to testify. This is significant. This could actually change policy. Or it could do nothing and we just embarrass ourselves in front of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Yes, Vex agreed. That too. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, Seoul glowed with lights. Somewhere in that city, people were reading their paper. Somewhere, hemivores were seeing themselves acknowledged. Somewhere, someone was getting angry about it. We're really doing this, Taemin said. We are really doing this, Vex confirmed. Good, Taemin said. I'm tired of cheap rent being the most interesting thing in my life. Vex laughed. Actually laughed. It was a strange sound, rough and unpracticed, but genuine. You are a very strange human, Vex said. Yeah, Taemin agreed. I really am. The weeks after publication were chaos. Taemin's inbox filled with thousands of messages. Some were supportive, many were hateful, a few were threatening. He stopped reading them after the first 100. The university assigned them security. 2 guards watched their building. The administration made public statements supporting academic freedom while privately asking Taemin to be more careful about inflammatory language. They want us to be quiet, Taemin said. They want us to be safe, his advisor corrected. There's a difference. But Taemin was not interested in being quiet. Not anymore. He and Vex gave interviews to news outlets. They spoke at campus events. They documented everything, every threat, every support message, every story from hemivores who reached out to thank them. The response from the hemivore community was overwhelming. Thousands of messages came from across the galaxy. Stories of discrimination, stories of survival, stories of hope that maybe, finally, someone was listening. One message stuck with Taemin. It was from a hemivore named Kess who lived on a mining colony. I have not left my home in 3 years, she wrote. The other workers threatened to kill me if they saw me outside. I order everything delivered. I exist in one room, but today I read your paper and I cried. Someone finally said what I have known my whole life. I am not the problem. They are. Taemin read the message out loud to Vex. There are millions like her, Vex said quietly, hiding, surviving, waiting for the galaxy to change. Maybe we can help it change, Taemin said. Or maybe we will just become targets, Vex replied. The Purity Front's activity has increased. They are angry about the paper. They claim we are spreading propaganda. Let them be angry. Angry people make mistakes. But the threats became more specific, more personal. Messages describing exactly how they would punish Taemin for betraying humanity. Messages promising Vex would pay for corrupting a human. The security guards were increased to 4. Then, the invitation from the Galactic Council was formalized. They would testify in 6 weeks. The hearing would be broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings would watch. I do not know if I can do this, Vex said one night. They sat in the living room with the curtains closed, speaking in front of the council. Having everyone see me, judge me, you don't have to, Taemin said. I can testify alone. No, this is about my people. I must speak, but I am afraid. Of what? Of saying the wrong thing, of making it worse, of confirming every negative belief they have about hemivores. Taemin understood the weight of representation, of knowing that your words would be used to judge an entire group. He felt it too, as a human. Earth was still new to the galactic community, still trying to prove itself. Every human action was scrutinized. We'll prepare, Taemin said. We'll practice. We'll make sure we say exactly what needs to be said. They spent weeks preparing their testimony. Vex worked with lawyers from hemivore advocacy groups. Taemin consulted with his professors and human rights organizations. They wrote speeches, rehearsed answers, anticipated hostile questions. The Galactic Council set detailed requirements. They would each have 15 minutes to present. Then there would be questions from council delegates. The hearing could last hours. 15 minutes, Vex said. 15 minutes to represent thousands of years of discrimination. Then we make every second count, Taemin said. 2 weeks before the hearing, something unexpected happened. A human coalition reached out. They called themselves Humans for Galactic Justice. They wanted to organize a demonstration to support hemivore rights. "We've been watching what you're doing," their representative said over video call. "We think it's important. Earth spent too long being on the receiving end of discrimination. We should stand against it, not perpetuate it." "How many people?" Taman asked. "Right now, about 5,000 humans across different planets. But it's growing. Your paper resonated with a lot of people." After the call, Vex seemed stunned. 5,000 humans supporting hemivores? Is that surprising? Yes, very surprising. Humans have no obligation to us, no benefit from defending us. Yet they do. "Maybe that's the point," Taman said. "Maybe doing the right thing shouldn't require obligation or benefit. Maybe it should just be right." But not all humans agreed. The Purity Front organized counter-protests. They claimed hemivores were dangerous, that they spread disease, that they corrupted human values. Their rhetoric became more violent. 3 days before they were supposed to leave for the council station, someone threw a brick through their apartment window. The glass shattered across the living room. Wrapped around the brick was a note: "Blood lovers die." The security guards caught no one. The police filed a report and left. "We should cancel," Vex said. He stood in the middle of the broken glass, shaking. "This is too dangerous. They will kill you. They will kill me. It is not worth it." "It is worth it," Taman said. "Every hemivore hiding in their home, afraid to go outside, it's worth it for them. Every person who dies because hospitals refuse to treat them, it's worth it for them. We're not doing this for us. We're doing it for everyone who can't. You could die. I could die crossing the street. I could die from a random illness. I could die because I'm poor and can't afford good health care. Death is always possible. That doesn't mean I should stop living." Vex looked at him with something like wonder. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Taman admitted. "But I'm also very stubborn, and I'm not backing down." They left for the council station the next day. The journey took 18 hours by shuttle. Taman had never been in space before. He pressed his face against the window and watched Earth shrink behind them. "It looks so small," he said. "All home worlds look small from space," Vex said. "It is humbling." The council station orbited Jupiter, enormous and ancient. It had been built by the first species to form the Galactic Council over 2,000 years ago. Millions of beings lived and worked there. It was a city in space, beautiful and intimidating. Their shuttle docked in a section designated for witnesses and visitors. They were escorted through security by armed guards. Everyone stared at them. Taman felt the weight of those stares, judging, measuring, deciding if they were worthy of being heard. Their accommodations were small but comfortable. 2 rooms connected by a shared living area. Large windows showed Jupiter's swirling storms. "This is where we wait," Vex said. They had 1 day before the hearing, 1 day to review their testimony, 1 day to prepare for the most important moment of their lives. That evening, they sat together and went through their speeches one final time. Taman's speech focused on the science, the biology of hemivores, the medical discrimination, the data showing they were no more dangerous than any other species, the human anomaly in acceptance rates. Vex's speech was personal. His brother's death, his own struggles, the daily reality of being hemivore in a galaxy that feared him. The hope that maybe things could be different. "Do you think they will listen?" Vex asked. "I don't know," Taman said honestly, "but they'll hear us. And sometimes being heard is the first step to being listened to." That night, Taman could not sleep. He stood at the window and watched Jupiter. The planet was massive, its storms older than human civilization. Somewhere down there, beneath those clouds, pressure crushed everything into nothing. But up here in the station, beings from 1,000 worlds worked together, lived together, built something bigger than themselves. If they could do that, surely they could learn to treat hemivores like people. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "We're watching tomorrow. The whole neighborhood is watching. We're proud of you. Another message from a hemivore he had never met. Thank you for speaking for us. No matter what happens, thank you. Another from a classmate. You're making history. Don't forget us when you're famous. Taman smiled. He was not going to be famous. He was just a poor graduate student who got lucky with cheap rent. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the galaxy needed to learn that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they decided to care. Vex appeared beside him at the window. Cannot sleep either? Too nervous. Me too. They stood in silence for a moment. Taman? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For giving me a home. For defending me. For fighting for my people when you had no reason to. I had plenty of reasons, Taman said. You're my friend. That's reason enough. Still, thank you. Thank me after we survive tomorrow, Taman said. Deal, Vex agreed. They stood at the window until dawn simulation began in the station. Light filled the sky. Jupiter gleamed. And somewhere in the vast station, delegates were waking up, preparing to listen, preparing to judge. Taman took a deep breath. Ready? Vex asked. No, Taman said, but let's do it anyway. They got dressed in formal clothes. Human suit for Taman. Hemivore, traditional garments for Vex, flowing and dark. They looked at themselves in the mirror. We look like we know what we're doing, Taman said. We have no idea what we are doing, Vex replied. Yeah, but they don't know that. They laughed. Nervous, anxious laughter. But laughter nonetheless. The escort arrived at exactly 800 hours. The council is ready for you. Taman and Vex exchanged one last look. Then they followed the escort into the hallway, toward the chamber where the galaxy would finally hear what they had to say, toward whatever came next. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling arched high above, covered in displays showing real-time translations in hundreds of languages. Curved seating surrounded a central platform where witnesses stood. Delegates from 50 different species filled the seats, their forms varying from humanoid to barely comprehensible. Taman's legs felt weak as he walked to the platform. Vex moved beside him with rigid posture. The chamber was full. Every seat occupied, cameras floated through the air, recording everything. Billions watching. The subcommittee chair was a being called Thess, from a species Taman had only seen in textbooks. They were tall and crystalline, their body catching light and throwing it back in strange patterns. We convene this hearing on the status and treatment of hemivore populations across council space. Thess's voice resonated through translation devices. We have invited researchers Taman and Vex to present their findings and testimony. You may begin. Taman stepped forward. His prepared speech was loaded on a small display. But suddenly, the words looked wrong. Too academic, too distant. He looked up at the delegates, at their alien faces, at the cameras. He put the display down. My name is Taman. I'm a graduate student from Earth. 6 months ago, I was desperate. I had been evicted. I had no money. I found a listing for an apartment with impossibly cheap rent. When I met my potential roommate, I learned why the rent was so low. He was hemivore. He needed blood to survive, and he was offering cheap rent in exchange for monthly donations. He paused. The chamber was completely silent. I said yes, not because I'm special, not because I'm particularly brave. I said yes because I was desperate, and I needed a place to live. That's it. That's how this started, with desperation and cheap rent. He saw some delegates lean forward with interest. What I learned over the next 6 months changed everything I thought I knew about the galaxy. I learned that my roommate, Vex, had been denied housing 23 times before he found me. I learned that hemivores pay premium prices for synthetic blood that barely sustains them. I learned that hospitals refuse to treat them, that employers won't hire them, that entire planets have banned them. I also learned that Vex is kind, that he's fastidious about cleanliness, that he works hard, that he mourns his brother who died because a hospital decided his life wasn't worth their blood supply, that he's afraid every single day, but he keeps trying anyway, Taman's voice grew stronger. Here's what I want you to understand. When those three men broke into our apartment and beat Vex until he could barely breathe, I wasn't thinking about biology or xenophobia or galactic policy. I was thinking that my friend was hurt, that someone I care about was bleeding on the floor, and I was angry. I donated blood that night, even though it was medically inadvisable. The hospital staff looked at me like I was crazy. The police barely investigated. Everyone acted like this was normal, like Vex getting beaten for existing was just expected. But it's not normal. It's not acceptable. And it's not inevitable. He pulled up a data display. Statistics filled the air in holographic form. Since Earth joined the Galactic Council, humans have had the highest rate of voluntary blood donation to hemovores. We're more likely to rent to them, employ them, and defend them. Galactic sociologists have written papers calling this naive, primitive, a lack of proper fear response. I think it's something else. I think humans recognize discrimination because we've lived through it. We spent thousands of years dividing ourselves by skin color, religion, birthplace, gender, who people loved. We know what bigotry looks like. We know how it justifies itself with words like safety and tradition and natural order. When I look at hemovore discrimination, I don't see safety measures. I see the same patterns humans use to oppress each other, the same excuses, the same fear of difference dressed up as policy. Taman looked directly at the camera. You call us naive, we call you cowards. You've built ships that cross galaxies. You've created technologies that bend reality. But you can't figure out how to treat beings with different dietary needs like people? That's not advanced. That's just sad. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. I'm not asking you to like hemovores. I'm not asking you to invite them to dinner parties. I'm asking you to let them live. Let them work. Let them exist without fear. That's not radical. That's basic decency. He stepped back. That's all I have to say. Thes's crystalline form shifted. Thank you for your testimony. Vex, you may now present. Vex moved to the front of the platform. His hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. I am Vex. I am hemovore. For those who do not know, this means I require blood to survive. Not by choice, not because I am a monster or a parasite, because of biology. Because this is how my species evolved. I want to tell you about my brother. His name was Ren. He was 23 when he died. He wanted to be a teacher. He loved children. He studied for years, but no school would hire him. They said parents would complain, that his presence would frighten students. So he worked in data processing instead, isolated in a small room, interacting with no one. Vex's voice cracked slightly. He got sick, a treatable illness, simple for any doctor. But the hospital refused treatment. They said they could not spare the blood supply for a hemovore. They said resources must be preserved for viable patients. He died 3 days later. My brother was viable. He was alive. He wanted to live. He wanted to teach. He wanted to matter. But the galaxy decided he did not deserve basic medical care. Vex pulled up his own data. Lists of names, thousands of them. This is a database maintained by hemovore advocacy groups. Every name represents a hemovore who died from preventable causes. Medical neglect, housing denial leading to exposure, suicide from isolation, violence from hate groups. These deaths span 200 years across 40 planets. Most were never investigated. Most were simply forgotten. We are not forgotten anymore. Taman saw me, not as a scary creature, not as a biological curiosity, as a person. He shared meals with me, talked with me, donated blood when I was dying, risked his own safety to defend me. One human did this, not because he is special, because he decided to see me as I am, a person trying to survive in a galaxy that wishes I did not exist. Vex looked around the chamber. You want to know why humans respond differently to hemivores? I will tell you. Because they remember what it feels like to be dehumanized. Because their history taught them that fear-based discrimination is always wrong. Because they made mistakes for thousands of years and then decided to do better. Maybe the rest of the galaxy can learn from that. Maybe you can look at us and see people instead of problems. Maybe you can decide that beings who need blood deserve the same rights as beings who need oxygen or radiation or methane. Or maybe you will do nothing. Maybe you will maintain your policies and your prejudices. Maybe nothing will change. But at least you heard us. At least for once, hemivores spoke in this chamber and someone listened. Vex stepped back beside Taman. Thes waited a moment. We will now proceed to questions from the delegates. The chair recognizes the delegate from Kelros. A large, armored being stood. You claim hemivores face discrimination, but are there not legitimate safety concerns? Blood-drinking species have historically been associated with violence and predation. Taman answered. Historically, humans associated dark skin with inferiority, associated women with emotional instability, associated foreign religions with danger. History is full of false associations used to justify discrimination. What matters is actual data, and the data shows hemivores are statistically no more violent than any other species. Another delegate stood. The human speaks of human progress, but Earth still has significant problems with discrimination and inequality. Why should we listen to a species that has not solved its own issues? Because we're trying, Taman said. We don't pretend we're perfect. We know we have problems, but we also know that progress is possible, that change is possible, that treating people with dignity is possible. Yeah, we're still learning, but at least we're learning. What's your excuse? Murmurs filled the chamber again. Some delegates looked offended. Others looked amused. A third delegate stood. This one was from a species Taman recognized as typically aligned with conservative policies. You advocate for removing restrictions on hemivores, but species have the right to determine who lives on their planets. You cannot force integration. Vex answered this time. You are correct. Species have rights to self-governance, but rights end where harm begins. When your self-governance means denying medical care, preventing employment, and accepting violence against an entire species, that is harm. That is not freedom. That is cruelty. And if species choose to maintain their restrictions, then we will document it, Taman said. We will show the galaxy exactly who chooses cruelty over compassion. We will let history judge you, and history is rarely kind to those who chose fear. The questions continued for hours. Some delegates were hostile, some were genuinely curious, some seemed moved by the testimony. Taman and Vex answered each question as honestly as they could. Finally, Thes spoke. This hearing will now recess. The subcommittee will deliberate on the testimony presented. We will reconvene in 3 days with our recommendations to the full council. The chamber emptied slowly. Taman and Vex stood on the platform, exhausted. We did it, Taman said. We spoke, Vex corrected. Whether they listened remains to be seen. They were escorted back to their quarters. Messages flooded their devices. News outlets wanted interviews. Advocacy groups wanted statements. The reactions were mixed. Some praised their testimony. Others called it emotional manipulation. The Purity Front released a statement condemning them as traitors. But there were other messages too, from hemivores across the galaxy, from humans who supported them, from beings of other species who said the testimony made them think differently. One message came from Kess, the hemivore who had not left her home in 3 years. I watched your testimony. Tomorrow I am going outside. Thank you for giving me courage. Taman showed the message to Vex. One person, Vex said quietly. We helped one person find courage. That's not nothing, Taman said. No, Vex agreed. It is not nothing. They spent the next 3 days waiting. The news coverage was intense. Debates raged across social media. Opinion pieces argued both sides. The galaxy was talking about hemivore rights in a way it never had before. On the third day, they were summoned back to the chamber. The subcommittee had reached a decision. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread that the subcommittee would announce its decision. Delegates who had missed the testimony now filled every available seat. The air hummed with anticipation. Taman and Vex stood on the platform again. Taman's heart pounded so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Vex stood perfectly still beside him, but Taman could see the tension in his shoulders. Thess's crystalline form caught the light as they stood. This subcommittee has reviewed the testimony provided by Taman and Vex, along with supporting documentation and data. We have also consulted with medical experts, legal scholars, and representatives from various species. The chamber went silent. We find that the evidence supports the claim of systematic discrimination against hemivore populations across council space. The documentation of preventable deaths, denied services, and housing restrictions demonstrates a pattern of marginalization that violates the fundamental principles of the Galactic Council. Taman felt his breath catch. They were actually listening. Therefore, this subcommittee recommends the following actions to the full council. First, medical facilities operating under council jurisdiction must provide equal treatment regardless of dietary requirements. Denial of care based solely on species biology will be classified as discriminatory practice. Second, housing and employment discrimination based on hemivore status will be prohibited in council territories. Member species may maintain their own policies within sovereign space, but council-operated facilities must comply. Third, we recommend the establishment of a task force to review historical cases of hemivore deaths and determine if systemic failures contributed to preventable mortality. Thess paused. These recommendations are not binding. The full council must vote on implementation. However, this subcommittee believes the evidence warrants immediate action. The chamber erupted. Some delegates stood and applauded. Others shouted objections. Arguments broke out across the seating areas. Security moved to maintain order. Taman looked at Vex. Vex looked back at him. Neither spoke. They did not need to. The message was clear in their eyes. We did it. Not everything, not even close to everything, but something. We did something. Thess restored order. This hearing is concluded. The full council will vote on these recommendations within 60 days. Taman and Vex, the subcommittee, thanks you for your testimony and research. They were escorted out through a side exit as the chamber continued to argue behind them. In the quiet hallway, Taman finally let himself breathe. 60 days, he said. They could still reject everything. They could, Vex agreed, but they might not. For the first time in my life, there is a possibility of change. Real change. That is more than I ever had before. The shuttle ride back to Earth was long and exhausting. They slept most of the way, drained from the intensity of the hearing. When they landed in Seoul, it was late evening. The city glowed below them, familiar and comforting. Their apartment building looked the same as when they left. The security guards were still there. The damage from the brick through the window had been repaired. Everything looked normal, but everything had changed. News of the subcommittee's recommendations had spread across Earth. Messages waited from every major human government expressing support. Human rights organizations pledged to push for stronger protections. Even some conservative groups, uncomfortable with being on the wrong side of a discrimination issue, issued statements supporting basic hemivore rights. Humans, Vex said, reading through the messages. Always so dramatic about everything, says the guy who just testified in front of billions of beings. Taman replied. They settled back into their apartment. The spray-painted words on the walls had been covered with fresh paint. The refrigeration units had been replaced, paid for by donations from hemivore advocacy groups. Everything was clean and ready. It should have felt like a victory. But Taman felt restless. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Now we wait," Vex said. "The council votes in 60 days. Until then, we continue with our lives." Just continue? Like normal? What else would we do? Taman thought about that. About the thousands of hemivores still hiding, still suffering, still waiting for the galaxy to change. About all the species facing discrimination for reasons they could not control. About how much work remained. "We could do more," he said. "More what?" "More research, more documentation, more speaking out. The subcommittee listened to us. Maybe others will too." Vex tilted his head. "You want to continue this, even though it is dangerous? Even though we have already done what we set out to do?" "We set out to write one paper," Taman said. "But that was before I knew how big this was. How many people need someone to speak for them? We have a platform now. People are listening. We should use it." "You are supposed to finish your degree," Vex pointed out. "You have classes, research obligations." "I'm doing research," Taman said. "Just different research. More important research." Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled that rare, small smile. "You really are insane." "Yeah," Taman agreed. "But you're stuck with me now. Cheap rent, remember?" Over the next weeks, they planned their next steps. More papers documenting discrimination, interviews with news outlets, consultation with advocacy groups. Taman adjusted his academic schedule. His professors, impressed by the attention his work received, agreed to let his testimony and research count toward his degree requirements. The apartment became a kind of headquarters. Other researchers reached out to collaborate. Hemivores contacted them with stories and data. Human activists organized regular meetings to coordinate efforts. One evening, there was a knock at the door. Taman opened it to find 3 hemivores standing in the hallway. They looked nervous. "We saw your testimony," one of them said. "We've been living in a shelter. The conditions are terrible. We heard you might know about housing options." Taman looked at Vex. Vex looked back at him. "Come in," Taman said. "Let's talk." They spent hours discussing options, resources, possibilities. By the end of the night, they had connected the 3 hemivores with human landlords willing to rent to them. It was not a permanent solution, but it was something. After they left, Vex said, "We cannot house every hemivore in Seoul." "No," Taman agreed, "but maybe we can help them find people who will. Maybe we can create a network. Connect hemivores with humans who don't care about biology. Build something sustainable." "You want to start an organization." "Maybe. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go." "That is becoming a pattern with you," Vex observed. They worked late into the night, sketching ideas. A database of friendly landlords. A volunteer network for blood donations. A legal advocacy group. Resources for hemivores facing discrimination. It was ambitious, probably impossible. But then, everything they had done so far had seemed impossible. The 60 days passed slowly. News coverage continued, but gradually faded as other stories took precedence. The galaxy moved on to other concerns. But Taman and Vex kept working, building their network, helping individual hemivores, documenting ongoing discrimination. Finally, the day of the council vote arrived. They watched the broadcast from their apartment, surrounded by human and hemivore friends they had made over the past months. The vote was close. Many species opposed the recommendations. They argued about sovereignty, tradition, resource allocation. The debate lasted hours. Then, the final count appeared on screen. The recommendations passed. By a narrow margin, but they passed. Medical discrimination would be prohibited in council territories. Housing and employment protections would be implemented. A task force would investigate historical cases. The room erupted in celebration. People hugged, some cried. Taman and Vex stood together, watching the screen in silence. "We did it," someone said. "No," Vex said quietly. "We started it. Now comes the harder part. actually implementing these policies, actually changing minds, actually building a galaxy where hemivores can live without fear. One step at a time, Taman said. Over the following months, things slowly changed. Not everywhere, not quickly, but change came. Council medical facilities began accepting hemivore patients. Some planets voluntarily adopted stronger protection. Human-led organizations supporting hemivore rights expanded across multiple worlds. The Purity Front continued their harassment. The threats did not stop. But they also did not escalate. The galaxy was watching now. Violence would be harder to ignore. 1 year after Taman first moved into the apartment, he and Vex sat at their kitchen table with a new problem. Their lease was ending. The landlord wanted to charge market rate now that the notoriety had passed. "We could afford it," Vex said. He had received multiple job offers after the testimony. "Better positions? Better pay?" "We could," Taman agreed. His own financial situation had improved too. The university had offered him a paid research position studying interspecies cohabitation. "But," Vex prompted, "but I was thinking, we've helped maybe 20 hemivores find housing this year. Imagine if we had a bigger space, enough for multiple rooms. We could create a proper co-housing situation. A place where hemivores and humans live together. Prove it works on a larger scale." Vex stared at him. "You want to start a commune?" "I want to start a model," Taman corrected. "Something other cities can replicate. Show that integration isn't just possible, it's beneficial." "You are definitely insane." "Probably, but you're still here." "I am still here," Vex agreed. He looked around their apartment, at the walls where hateful words had once been, at the table where they had written their paper, at the space where they had built something neither of them expected. This started with cheap rent. "Yeah," Taman said. "Funny how things work out." They found a larger building in a different district. 6 bedrooms, common areas, enough space for 8 people comfortably. They posted listings specifically seeking mixed human-hemivore cohabitation. Applications poured in. The move happened on a spring day. Friends helped carry boxes, hemivores and humans working together, laughing and complaining about heavy furniture. It felt normal, natural, like this was how things should always have been. That evening, everyone sat together in the new common area. 4 humans, 4 hemivores, sharing food and blood and conversation, planning how to organize the space, discussing house rules, making jokes. Taman looked around at these people who had been strangers months ago, who had found each other through tragedy and resistance and hope, who were building something new together. "What are you thinking?" Vex asked. "That we're really doing this," Taman said. "Living the change we wanted to see." Very philosophical. "Shut up," Vex smiled. "You know what the strangest part is? When I placed that housing listing a year ago, I never imagined this. I thought maybe I would find one person desperate enough to tolerate me. Instead, I found a friend, a movement, a future." "You found cheap rent," Taman said. "I found much more than that." "Yeah," Taman agreed. "Me too." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Taman stood at the window looking out at Sol. The city sparkled below. Somewhere out there, the galaxy continued spinning. Species continued interacting, some with prejudice, some with violence, some with fear, but also with hope, with change, with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, beings could learn to see past their differences. His phone buzzed, a message from Kess, the hemivore who had been hiding for 3 years. She had sent a photo, her, standing outside, face turned toward the sun. The caption read, "First day of my new job. Thank you for showing me it was possible." Taman smiled. One person at a time, one home at a time, one changed mind at a time. It was not perfect. It was not fast, but it was progress. And progress, Taman had learned, was worth fighting for. He went to bed feeling tired but satisfied. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this building in Seoul, 8 beings from 2 different species slept under the same roof. Safe, accepted, home. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.